Arizona has a reputation for heat, desert, and wide-open sky. But underneath all of that, there is a collection of conspiracy theories so specific, so tied to real events, that some of them are genuinely hard to dismiss. At number 10, we have the most witnessed UFO event in American history. The date was March 13th, 1997. The location was the sky above Phoenix. And what happened that night has never been fully explained to the satisfaction of the people who saw it. Thousands of Arizona residents reported a massive formation of lights moving silently across the sky. No engine sound, no turbulence, nothing you would expect from conventional aircraft. The formation was so large that witnesses standing miles apart all described the same thing at the same time. Among the witnesses was Fife Symington, the sitting governor of Arizona. This was not a farmer in a remote field. This was the chief executive of the state, watching something move across the Phoenix sky that he could not identify and could not explain. The government eventually offered an explanation. The U.S. military said the lights were flares dropped by the Maryland Air National Guard during a training exercise. Witnesses pushed back hard. Flares fall. Flares don't hold formation. Flares don't glide silently over a city of 1 million people. What investigators later confirmed made everything murkier. There were actually two separate events that night, two distinct phenomena, and the military's explanation only accounted for one of them. That gap in the official record is exactly where the conspiracy theories took root and never left. Governor Symington's initial response was to mock the whole thing. He held a press conference and brought out a staffer in an alien costume. The crowd laughed. But years later, Symington publicly reversed his position and stated that what he personally saw that night could not have been flares. A sitting governor saying the government's explanation does not hold up. That is not a small thing. The Phoenix lights remain an open question, and the core conspiracy theory, that authorities knew exactly what it was and chose silence, has never been disproven. Coming in at number 9 is a theory that connects Arizona directly to the most famous secret military base on Earth. Most people know Area 51 sits across the border in Nevada, but a persistent theory argues that some of its most sensitive operations were quietly moved to Arizona. The specific locations named in this theory are Davis Monthan Air Force Base, near Tucson, and the Barry M. Goldwater Range, a vast military corridor in the southwestern corner of the state. The claim is that recovered craft and classified biological materials were transferred to these facilities without public disclosure. The theorists backing this idea point to something that is genuinely verifiable. Arizona has some of the largest restricted military airspace in the continental United States. If you look at a map of where civilian aircraft cannot fly over Arizona, the scale of it is striking. Davis Monthan is also home to something called the Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group, which most people know as the aircraft boneyard. Thousands of decommissioned military planes stored in the desert. Some theorists argue this facility also conceals underground storage areas for classified materials. There is no credible evidence that Area 51 operations were relocated to Arizona. The boneyard exists for a straightforward logistical reason. Dry desert air slows metal corrosion. But the sheer size of the restricted zones gives the theory room to breathe. When large sections of your state are legally off limits to the public, and the government declines to explain everything that happens inside those boundaries, people fill in the gaps. That is not unique to Arizona. But Arizona's military footprint is large enough to make the gaps feel significant. The Area 51 connection theory has never produced a document, a photograph, or a whistleblower testimony that holds up to scrutiny. What it has produced is a persistent question about why so much of southern Arizona's sky and land remains restricted, and what exactly is being protected there. At number 8, we are heading to one of the most visited spiritual destinations in the United States, Sedona, Arizona, Red Rock Country, and the center of a conspiracy theory about energy, government suppression, and science that powerful institutions allegedly do not want confirmed. Sedona is internationally known for its so-called energy vortexes, locations where believers say the Earth's natural energy fields concentrate in ways that produce healing and spiritual effects on the people who visit them. Millions of tourists have come specifically for this experience. The conspiracy theory, sitting on top of this cultural phenomenon, is specific. It claims that the U.S. government and mainstream scientific institutions have actively worked to suppress serious research into these vortexes, because confirming their existence would create problems for established physics and the global energy industry. Some versions of this theory go further, arguing that Sedona sits above a natural power source that has been quietly studied by government agencies for decades, with findings kept from the public. The land itself, in this framing, is both the secret and the proof. Here is what is actually verifiable about Sedona's geology. The red rock formations are extremely iron-rich, and that iron content does produce measurable electromagnetic variation across the landscape. Whether that variation produces any of the effects that visitors report is a separate question entirely. No peer-reviewed scientific study has confirmed the existence of energy vortexes in the way believers describe them. But here is the other side of that fact. No documented government suppression campaign has been uncovered either. The absence of proof runs in both directions. What keeps this theory alive is partly the landscape itself, and partly the genuine frustration that serious scientific institutions have shown little interest in studying sedona's unusual electromagnetic properties in depth. When mainstream science ignores something people experience strongly, the conspiracy explanation fills that space. Number 7 takes us into the forests of central Arizona, to a geological feature called the Mogollon Rim, a dramatic cliff and escarpment stretching across the middle of the state, and to a creature that has been reported there for over 100 years. The Mogollon Monster is Arizona's version of Bigfoot. Described in regional folklore since at least the early 1900s, it is a large bipedal creature reported by hikers, hunters, and locals across decades of sightings along the rim. The creature has never been captured, filmed clearly, or physically documented. But the conspiracy theory here is not simply that the creature exists. It is that wildlife authorities and federal agencies already know it exists, have documented an unclassified large primate species living in Arizona's remote forests, and have made a deliberate decision to keep that information from the public. The reason given for this alleged suppression is economic. The Mogollon Rim region supports active logging, mining, and land use industries. Confirming the existence of an unknown large primate would trigger federal protections that could shut down or severely restrict those industries across a significant portion of Arizona. The terrain itself makes this theory hard to completely laugh off. The Mogollon Rim is dense, rugged, and genuinely difficult to survey comprehensively. Wildlife biologists acknowledge that remote sections of this landscape are not thoroughly monitored. The forest is large enough that the question of what lives in it is not entirely settled. No bones, no DNA, no conclusive photographic evidence has ever been produced for the Mogollon Monster. Every physical trace that theorists have pointed to has been explained by known wildlife. No official body has ever acknowledged the creature's existence in any capacity. But sightings continue to be reported, and the forest continues to be exactly the kind of place where people can point at the tree line and say that something is out there, and nobody can fully prove them wrong. That is the particular power of the Mogollon theory. At number 6, we have a conspiracy theory that started in 2018 and caused real harm. A veterans advocacy group announced they had found an abandoned camp in the desert outside Tucson. They said it was evidence of an active child trafficking operation. The story spread across the internet within hours. The images and descriptions that circulated online were alarming. Straps attached to trees, children's clothing, underground spaces. The framing of the discovery suggested that something genuinely criminal had taken place at this site, and that authorities were either unaware or unwilling to act. Law enforcement did act. The Tucson Police Department and the Pima County Sheriff's Office both investigated the site. Their findings were unambiguous. The location was a transient camp, consistent with the kind of temporary shelters used by migrants and homeless individuals in remote desert areas of southern Arizona. No evidence of child trafficking was found. No victims were identified. No criminal activity connected to the claims was documented at the site. The official investigation closed without producing anything that supported the viral narrative that had by then reached millions of people online. Despite the findings, the theory did not stop. It merged with broader QAnon-adjacent narratives about trafficking networks, and the Tucson camp became a reference point in a much larger and more sprawling set of claims about organized abuse that were circulating nationally at the time. What makes this particular theory worth examining carefully is that child trafficking is a real and serious problem. The exploitation of vulnerable people in border regions is documented and ongoing. The Tucson camp story took that genuine concern and redirected public attention and energy towards something that did not exist. Actual investigators and advocacy organizations working on real trafficking cases have noted that viral conspiracy theories in this space drain resources, create noise, and make the work of identifying real crimes harder. The Tucson story is a documented example of how sincere concern can be turned into something that actively causes harm. Number 5 is where Arizona became the center of one of the most scrutinized and contested political arguments in modern American history, the 2020 presidential election, and the claim that what Arizona voters chose was not what Arizona's certified results actually showed. The theory spread quickly. After election night, voting machines had been compromised. Ballots had been manipulated. The certified outcome in Maricopa County did not reflect what actually happened. These claims circulated across social media, in news coverage, and in legal filings across the weeks that followed. The Arizona State Senate responded by commissioning a private audit. The organization brought in to conduct it was called Cyber Ninjas. This became the most extensive and publicly covered post-election review conducted anywhere in the country following the 2020 election. It lasted months. It cost millions of dollars. The Cyber Ninjas audit produced its final report, and the report confirmed that Joe Biden had won Maricopa County. The audit's own findings, conducted by a firm hired specifically by those who believed the results were wrong, did not find evidence of fraud at the scale required to change the outcome. Legal challenges were filed across multiple courts. Judges appointed by both political parties reviewed the evidence and rejected the claims. No court at any level found sufficient grounds to overturn or formally question Arizona's certified election results. The legal record on this is consistent and clear, and yet the theories remained active. Arizona's 2020 election became a permanent fixture in a broader national argument about electoral integrity, voting systems, and institutional trust. The specific claims were rejected by the audit and the courts, but the underlying suspicion did not dissolve. What Arizona's 2020 election story illustrates is how a conspiracy theory can survive its own disproof. When the audit meant to validate a claim instead contradicts it, and the claim continues anyway, something else is happening beyond a simple dispute about facts. That is what makes this one particularly worth understanding. Coming in at number 4 is a theory that starts with a newspaper article from 1909 and has not been resolved since. The Arizona Gazette published a story describing an extraordinary underground discovery beneath the Grand Canyon. An explorer named G.E. Kincaid allegedly found a vast tunnel system hidden inside the canyon walls. According to the article, the tunnels contained Egyptian-style artifacts, hieroglyphics carved into stone, and mummies. The explorer was described as affiliated with the Smithsonian Institution. The discovery, if real, would have rewritten the accepted history of human civilization in the Americas entirely. The Smithsonian's response to this story has been consistent across more than a century. The institution has no record of G.E. Kincaid, no record of the expedition, no record of the artifacts, no documentation of any kind connecting the Smithsonian to the 1909 article or to anything it described. The conspiracy theory built around this absence of records argues that the absence itself is the proof. The Smithsonian, in this framing, destroyed or concealed the artifacts because confirming Egyptian or advanced pre-Columbian presence in the Grand Canyon would collapse the official historical narrative of how humans arrived and developed in North America. Most researchers who have examined the 1909 article closely believe it was either a deliberate hoax or a piece of sensationalized frontier journalism written to sell newspapers. The specific details in the article do not hold up well to scrutiny, and no corroborating source from the period has ever been identified. But there is one detail about the Grand Canyon that the conspiracy theory uses effectively. Large sections of the inner gorge are genuinely restricted to the public. The National Park Service limits access for documented conservation and safety reasons, but restricted access and hidden tunnels are easy to conflate when you want them to be. The Grand Canyon tunnel theory has persisted for over 100 years because it combines three things that fuel durable conspiracy theories: a specific historical claim, an institution that officially denies it, and a physical location that ordinary people cannot freely access to investigate. That combination keeps it going regardless of the evidence. At number 3, we have something that does not require much imagination to make strange, because the real story is already genuinely strange. Biosphere 2, a sealed ecological facility built in Oracle, Arizona in the late 1980s. One of the most unusual scientific experiments ever conducted on American soil. 8 people were sealed inside the structure in 1991. And were intended to live there for 2 years in a fully self-sustaining closed ecosystem. The concept was to test whether humans could survive inside a sealed environment, with potential applications for long-term space colonization. It was real. It actually happened. The conspiracy theories around Biosphere 2 go well beyond what the project publicly claimed to be. Some allege it was a covert government study in psychological manipulation and social control, using the isolated crew as test subjects without their full understanding of what was actually being measured and why. Other theories connect the project's billionaire backer, Edward Bass, to broader claims about elite preparation for societal collapse. In this version, Biosphere 2 was not a science experiment at all. It was a prototype survival facility, testing whether a small group of selected people could sustain themselves after a global catastrophe. What is documented, outside of the theories, is that the experiment ran into serious problems. Oxygen levels inside the structure dropped to dangerous levels. Food production fell short of what the crew needed. Internal conflicts among the 8 participants became severe enough to split the group into opposing factions. The project's management made decisions during the experiment that drew significant scientific criticism, including secretly pumping in oxygen when levels fell and allowing food to be brought in. Critics argued these interventions invalidated the experiment's core premise. The project was never fully repeated on the same scale. Biosphere 2 today operates as a University of Arizona research facility and is open to the public, but the conspiracy theories about its original purpose have not disappeared, partly because the experiment's real story is strange enough that the additional layer of speculation does not feel entirely out of place. Number 2 goes back over 1,000 years. The Hohokam were a civilization that built one of the most sophisticated irrigation systems in the ancient world, right here in the Sonoran Desert of what is now Arizona. And their story contains a disappearance that has never been fully explained. The Hohokam constructed hundreds of miles of irrigation canals across the desert, a network so effective that modern Phoenix still follows some of the same routes today. They sustained a complex society in one of the harshest environments on Earth for over 1,000 years before their civilization collapsed around 1450. The mainstream archaeological explanation involves prolonged drought, soil degradation from over-irrigation, and social disruption. These are serious factors supported by physical evidence. But the conspiracy theory version of the Hohokam story argues that the full picture of their civilization has been deliberately withheld by academic institutions. Specifically, the theory claims that evidence of Hohokam contact with Mesoamerican cultures, advanced astronomical knowledge, and engineering capabilities that do not fit conventional timelines for pre-Columbian North America has been downplayed or suppressed to maintain a simplified academic narrative about who lived in this region and what they achieved. Some theorists push further and connect the Hohokam canal system to broader claims about lost civilizations and ancient engineering knowledge. The argument is that a desert society building canals of this precision and scale points to a knowledge base that archaeology has not fully accounted for or acknowledged. What genuine scholarship actually shows is that Hohokam connections to Mesoamerican trade networks are documented and accepted by mainstream archaeology. The debate is about the extent of that influence, not whether it existed. Real scholarly disagreement about the collapse continues, which gives the conspiracy framing a surface foothold it would not otherwise have. The Hohokam were genuinely remarkable. What they built in the desert is not disputed. The conspiracy theory around them works because it takes real achievement and real academic gaps and uses them to suggest that what we know is only a fraction of what exists. That gap between fact and implication is where the theory lives. And at number 1, the biggest theory of all. The one that is not about a single event or a single location, but about the entire Phoenix metropolitan area itself. The claim that Phoenix has been used since at least the 1990s as a testing ground for surveillance infrastructure and behavioral control systems. The theory holds that Phoenix was selected deliberately. Its rapid growth, its highly planned grid-based layout, its history of adopting law enforcement technology early, and the heavy presence of defense and intelligence contractors in the region all made it an ideal environment for rolling out systems that could later be deployed nationally. Maricopa County does have a documented history of early technology adoption. Automated license plate readers, predictive policing software, surveillance systems that were in place in Phoenix before many comparable American cities had begun the conversation about whether to adopt them. These are verifiable facts, not speculation. The theory argues that the population of Greater Phoenix has effectively been living inside a real-world testing environment for tools of mass surveillance and behavioral monitoring without meaningful public consent or awareness, and that the data collected has been used to refine systems intended for national deployment. City officials have consistently framed all of this technology adoption in terms of public safety efficiency. There is no documented evidence of a secret control program, no leaked directive, no insider account that holds up. What exists is a city that adopted surveillance tools quickly, and a defense industry that is very present in the region. But here is what makes number 1 different from the 9 theories before it. You do not need to believe the conspiracy version to find the underlying questions worth asking. How do rapidly growing cities make decisions about surveillance technology? Who has access to that data? What oversight exists? These are legitimate questions with or without a secret program behind them. Arizona has given us alien lights, hidden tunnels, vanished civilizations, sealed ecosystems, and a city some people believe is being used to practice controlling the rest of the country. Some of these theories are easy to dismiss, some are harder, but the state keeps generating them, and that alone tells you something.